The salt air whipped across the Naval Special Warfare compound as Petty Officer First Class Sarah Martinez stepped out of the government sedan that had brought her from the airport. Her sea bag slung over one shoulder. She took a moment to survey the sprawling facility that would be her new home for the next 2 years. The concrete buildings looked weathered by decades of ocean spray, and she could hear the distant sound of automatic weapons fire from the training ranges. Sarah had requested this assignment specifically. After 8 years as a Navy cryptologist, she had grown tired of sitting behind computer screens in windowless rooms. When the opportunity arose to serve as the intelligence liaison for SEAL Team 7, she jumped at the chance. The role would put her directly in the field with some of the Navy's most elite operators, analyzing enemy communications and providing real-time intelligence support during missions. She had spent months preparing for this assignment. Beyond maintaining her security clearances, she had pushed herself through additional physical training, knowing that while she wouldn't be expected to meet SEAL standards, she needed to be able to keep up during operations. Her morning runs had stretched from 3 miles to 8. She had added weight training and swimming to her routine. Her commanding officer at her previous duty station had warned her that the SEALs had a reputation for being difficult to work with, especially when it came to outsiders joining their tight-knit teams. The administrative building was easy to find, marked with the distinctive Navy Special Warfare insignia. Inside, the walls were lined with photographs of SEAL teams from decades past, their faces serious and determined. Sarah approached the reception desk where a young sailor in dress blues was handling paperwork. "Petty Officer Martinez reporting for duty," she announced, handing over her orders. The sailor glanced at the papers and then looked up at her with surprise. "You're the new intel specialist?" "That's right." He picked up a phone and spoke quietly for a moment before hanging up. "Senior Chief Ramirez will be right out to get you." While she waited, Sarah noticed a group of men in desert camouflage uniforms gathered around a bulletin board near the entrance. Their conversation was animated, and she caught fragments about an upcoming training exercise. They were clearly SEALs, evident from their bearing and the way they carried themselves with easy confidence. One of them, a tall man with close-cropped blonde hair, noticed her watching and elbowed his companion. "Looks like we got ourselves a visitor," he said loud enough for her to hear. Senior Chief Ramirez emerged from a side office before Sarah could respond. He was a compact man in his early 40s with graying temples and the weathered look of someone who had spent years in harsh environments. His handshake was firm, and his eyes assessed her with professional interest. "Welcome to Team 7, Martinez. I'm Senior Chief Ramirez, Operations Chief. Ready for the grand tour?" As they walked through the compound, Ramirez explained the layout. The main building housed administrative offices, briefing rooms, and the communications center where Sarah would be spending much of her time. Adjacent buildings contained the armory, equipment storage, and specialized training facilities. The team's living quarters were in a separate complex connected by covered walkways. "Your clearance level gives you access to everything except the weapons storage," Ramirez explained as they walked. "Your primary job is monitoring enemy communications during operations and providing real-time analysis to the team leader. You'll also be responsible for pre-mission intelligence briefings and post-mission reports." They entered the communications center, a sophisticated facility filled with banks of monitors and radio equipment. 2 technicians were on duty, monitoring frequencies and updating digital maps on large wall displays. Sarah felt immediately at home among the electronic equipment, recognizing several systems she had worked with at previous assignments. "This is where you'll spend most of your time when we're not deployed," Ramirez continued. "The team's currently preparing for a training exercise in 2 weeks. It'll be your first chance to work with them in the field." He led her to a smaller office adjacent to the main communications room. The space was spartanly furnished with a desk, computer terminal, and several secure filing cabinets. A window overlooked the training compound, where she could see several men running in formation. "This is your workspace. You'll share the communications center with the other technicians, but this gives you a quiet place for analysis and report writing." Ramirez paused and looked at her seriously. "I won't lie to you, Martinez. Some of the guys aren't thrilled about having an outsider join the team, especially someone who hasn't been through BUD/S training. They're protective of their brotherhood, and They've seen too many support personnel who couldn't handle the pressure when things got real. Sarah nodded. She had expected this reaction and had prepared herself mentally for the challenge of proving her worth to the team. I understand, Senior Chief. I'm here to do a job, and I intend to do it well. That's what I like to hear. The team leader, Lieutenant Commander Blake, is currently in a briefing, but you'll meet him tomorrow morning. For now, let's get you settled in your quarters and introduce you to some of the team. They walked across the compound to the living quarters, a modern building with individual rooms for each team member. Sarah's room was on the second floor, simply furnished but comfortable. Large windows provided natural light and a view of the ocean beyond the base perimeter. After dropping off her sea bag, they headed to the team lounge, a large room with comfortable seating, a big screen television, and a small kitchen area. Several team members were present, some reading, others playing video games. The conversation died as Sarah and Senior Chief Ramirez entered. "Gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Petty Officer Martinez, our new intelligence specialist," Ramirez announced. The introductions were polite, but cool. She met Petty Officer Johnson, a quiet man from Alabama who served as the team's medic. Petty Officer Stevens was the communications specialist who would be working closely with her. Chief Petty Officer Williams was the weapons sergeant, a massive man with arms covered in tattoos who looked like he could bench press a small car. The blonde man she had noticed earlier was introduced as Petty Officer First Class Derek Thompson, one of the team's breachers. His handshake lingered a moment longer than necessary, and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "So, Martinez, what makes you think you can keep up with the SEAL team?" Thompson asked, his tone casual but with an underlying edge. "I've spent 8 years in intelligence work, and I've prepared extensively for this assignment," Sarah replied evenly. "I understand the importance of what you do, and I'm here to support the mission." "Intelligence work," Thompson repeated, glancing at his teammates. "Sitting behind a desk pushing papers around? Analyzing enemy communications, identifying threats, providing tactical intelligence," Sarah corrected. "The kind of work that keeps teams alive in the field." Chief Williams spoke up from where he was cleaning a pistol. "No offense, Martinez, but we've had support personnel before. Most of them fold the first time bullets start flying." Senior Chief Ramirez intervened before the conversation could escalate further. "Martinez comes highly recommended. She's got top secret clearance and 8 years of experience. Let's give her a chance to prove herself before we make any judgments." The tension in the room was palpable, but Sarah had expected this reception. She knew that trust in the special operations community was earned through demonstrated performance, not credentials or recommendations. Over the next few days, Sarah threw herself into learning the team's procedures and protocols. She spent hours in the communications center, familiarizing herself with their equipment and studying the latest intelligence reports from their area of operations. The technicians, Staff Sergeant Lopez and Petty Officer Kim, were helpful and professional, showing her the intricacies of the various monitoring systems. She also made it a point to learn about each team member's background and specialties. Lieutenant Commander Blake, the team leader, was a former enlisted SEAL who had earned his commission through battlefield performance. He was known for his tactical brilliance and his protective attitude toward his men. The team's sniper, Petty Officer Rodriguez, was legendary for his precision shooting skills. Each man brought specific expertise that made the team effective as a whole. During her first week, Sarah noticed that while most of the team members were professional in their interactions with her, Thompson and a few others seemed determined to test her resolve. They would make pointed comments about her lack of combat experience or question her presence during team meetings. She responded by working harder, staying late to review intelligence reports, and preparing detailed briefings that demonstrated her value to the mission. The real test came during her first training exercise. The scenario involved a hostage rescue in a simulated Middle Eastern village that had been constructed on a remote part of the base. Sarah would be positioned at the command post, monitoring enemy communications and providing real-time intelligence to the assault team. As the team prepared for the exercise, she noticed Thompson and several others huddled together near the equipment shed. Their conversation was too quiet to overhear, but their frequent glances in her direction made it clear they were discussing her. The exercise began before dawn. Sarah was positioned in a camouflage command post with Lieutenant Commander Blake and Senior Chief Ramirez. Her job was to monitor several radio frequencies that would simulate enemy communications during the assault. The scenario called for her to identify changes in enemy patrol patterns and warn the team of potential ambushes. For the first hour, everything proceeded according to plan. The SEAL team moved through the village systematically, clearing buildings and searching for the simulated hostages. Sarah tracked their progress on her monitors while simultaneously listening to the scripted enemy communications that were being broadcast by the training controllers. Then, things started going wrong. Her primary radio malfunctioned, cutting out intermittently and making it difficult to hear the communications clearly. When she tried to switch to the backup system, she discovered that several key frequencies had been changed without her knowledge. She frantically tried to re-establish communications while the exercise continued around her. Lieutenant Commander Blake noticed her distress. "What's the problem, Martinez?" "Sir, I'm having trouble with the radio systems. The frequencies don't match what was in the briefing, and my primary radio is cutting in and out." Blake frowned and checked his own communication gear. Everything seemed to be working properly on his end. Senior Chief Ramirez moved over to examine Sarah's equipment. "The radio looks fine," Ramirez said after a quick inspection. "Are you sure you have the right frequencies?" Sarah double-checked her notes, but the numbers definitely didn't match what she was hearing on the airwaves. Meanwhile, the exercise was reaching a critical phase. The assault team was approaching the building where the hostages were supposedly being held, and they needed timely intelligence about enemy positions. She managed to pick up fragments of enemy communications on various frequencies, but without the complete picture, her intelligence was incomplete and potentially misleading. She provided what information she could, but she could see the disappointment in Blake's eyes when her reports failed to match the actual scenario that was unfolding. After the exercise concluded, the team gathered for the standard after-action review. Sarah's performance was discussed in detail, with several team members expressing concerns about the communication failures. Thompson was particularly vocal about her inability to provide accurate intelligence during the critical phase of the operation. If this had been a real mission, people could have died because of those communication problems, he said, looking directly at Sarah. Lieutenant Commander Blake was more diplomatic, but equally concerned. "Martinez, we need to figure out what went wrong with your equipment and make sure it doesn't happen again. Reliable intelligence is crucial to mission success." Sarah nodded, accepting the criticism even though she suspected the equipment problems hadn't been accidental. After the meeting, she returned to the communications center to thoroughly examine her gear. What she found confirmed her suspicions. Someone had deliberately altered the frequency settings on her backup radio and had loosened a connection in her primary radio that would cause intermittent failures. The sabotage was subtle enough that it might have been attributed to equipment malfunction, but Sarah's technical background allowed her to recognize the deliberate tampering. She faced a difficult decision. She could report the sabotage to Senior Chief Ramirez or Lieutenant Commander Blake, but without proof of who was responsible, it would look like she was making excuses for her poor performance. Alternatively, she could say nothing and work to prevent future incidents while quietly gathering evidence. That evening, as she sat in her room reviewing the day's events, Sarah realized that this was more than just hazing or testing her resolve. Someone was actively trying to sabotage her career and force her out of the team. The question was whether it was Thompson acting alone or if others were involved. She spent the next several days carefully observing the team dynamics and paying attention to who had access to her equipment. She also began implementing her own security measures, checking her gear before each training session and keeping detailed logs of any anomalies she discovered. The pattern became clear over the following weeks. Before each training exercise or evaluation, she would find subtle signs of tampering with her equipment. Sometimes it was altered settings, other times it was loosened connections or missing components. Each incident was designed to make her look incompetent without being obvious enough to prove deliberate sabotage. Sarah's performance suffered as a result, and she could sense growing dissatisfaction among the team leadership. Senior Chief Ramirez had several private conversations with her about the importance of reliable performance, and Lieutenant Commander Blake began asking pointed questions about her technical qualifications. The situation came to a head during a major training exercise that was being observed by senior officers from Naval Special Warfare Command. The scenario was complex, involving multiple teams and sophisticated enemy communications that would challenge even experienced intelligence specialists. Sarah had spent days preparing for the exercise, studying the planned scenarios, and testing her equipment repeatedly. On the morning of the exercise, she conducted a final check of all her gear and found everything in working order. The exercise began with her team conducting a reconnaissance mission in preparation for a larger assault. Sarah's job was to monitor enemy communications and provide early warning of any changes in their defensive positions. The information she gathered would be crucial for the success of the follow-on assault. For the first 2 hours, everything worked perfectly. She intercepted and analyzed dozens of enemy communications, building a detailed picture of their positions and intentions. Her reports were precise and timely, allowing the SEAL team to adjust their approach and avoid several potential ambushes. Then, just as the exercise was reaching its most critical phase, her entire communication system failed simultaneously. Every radio went dead, her computer screens flickered and went black, and even her backup power supply stopped working. She was completely cut off from the intelligence networks just when the team needed her most. Sarah immediately began troubleshooting the problem, but it was clear that this wasn't a simple equipment failure. The simultaneous failure of multiple independent systems suggested deliberate sabotage on a scale that went beyond anything she had experienced before. Lieutenant Commander Blake's voice crackled over the team radio, asking for an intelligence update. Sarah had no choice but to report that she was experiencing a complete system failure and would be unable to provide intelligence support for the remainder of the exercise. The impact was immediate and devastating. Without real-time intelligence, the assault team was forced to operate blind, making tactical decisions based on outdated information. They still completed the mission successfully, demonstrating their skill and adaptability, but the performance was far below their usual standards. During the after-action review, the visiting senior officers expressed serious concerns about the intelligence support failures. One captain suggested that perhaps the team needed a more experienced intelligence specialist, someone with a proven track record in combat operations. Sarah sat in stunned silence as her competence and qualifications were questioned in front of the entire team and senior leadership. She could see Thompson and his allies exchanging satisfied glances, clearly pleased with the outcome of their sabotage campaign. That night, Sarah sat in her room contemplating her options. She could request a transfer and leave the team, admitting defeat and allowing the saboteurs to win. She could continue trying to prove herself while enduring more sabotage and likely eventual removal from the team. Or she could take a more aggressive approach and gather the evidence needed to expose what was happening. She made her decision. If Thompson and his allies wanted to play games, she would show them exactly what a trained intelligence specialist was capable of when she set her mind to it. They had underestimated her technical skills and her determination to succeed. Over the next few days, Sarah began implementing a plan that would turn the tables on her tormentors. She started by conducting a detailed technical analysis of all the sabotage incidents, documenting the specific types of tampering and the level of expertise required to carry them out. She also began discreetly investigating the backgrounds and capabilities of the team members who had access to her equipment. What she discovered was more extensive than she had imagined. The sabotage campaign wasn't just about making her look incompetent. Someone was systematically documenting her failures and building a case for her removal that would be difficult to challenge through normal channels. Sarah realized she was facing a coordinated effort designed not just to embarrass her, but to destroy her career and reputation. The stakes were much higher than she had initially understood, and she would need to be equally systematic and thorough in her response. She began working late into the night, using her security clearance and technical skills to gather information about her adversaries. What she found would eventually shock everyone involved and expose a level of corruption that threatened the integrity of the entire SEAL community. But first, she needed to survive the next training exercise without falling victim to another sabotage attempt. Thompson and his allies were becoming bolder and more sophisticated in their efforts, and Sarah suspected they were planning something that would permanently end her career with the team. She spent the weekend before the next exercise implementing her own countermeasures. If they wanted to play electronic warfare games with a trained cryptologist, she would give them a demonstration they would never forget. Sarah spent the entire weekend preparing for what she knew would be her most important test yet. The next training exercise was scheduled for Tuesday, and she suspected Thompson and his allies were planning their most sophisticated sabotage attempt to coincide with another visit from senior leadership. This time, however, she would be ready for them. Working alone in the communications center during the quiet weekend hours, Sarah implemented a series of security measures that would not only protect her equipment, but also provide evidence of any tampering attempts. She installed microscopic motion detectors on her radio cases, set up hidden cameras with infrared capability, and created redundant backup systems that would be difficult for saboteurs to locate and disable. Her years of experience in electronic surveillance and counterintelligence were finally paying dividends. Sarah had always been modest about her technical capabilities, but her personnel file contained classified details about operations where her skills had been crucial to mission success. She had helped track down terrorist communication networks, identified double agents through signal analysis, and even assisted in cyber warfare operations against hostile nations. More importantly, she began conducting her own intelligence-gathering operation against the team members she suspected of sabotage. Using her security clearance and access to personnel databases, she started building detailed profiles of Thompson and his associates. What she discovered was deeply troubling. Thompson's record showed several instances of conflicts with authority figures and complaints from support personnel at previous duty stations. 2 female sailors had filed harassment complaints against him that had been quietly resolved without formal disciplinary action. His performance evaluations were consistently good, but, reading between the lines, Sarah could see a pattern of behavior that suggested he viewed the SEAL community as an exclusive brotherhood that should be protected from outside influence. Petty Officer Second Class Mike Kowalski, one of Thompson's closest allies on the team, had an even more concerning background. His previous assignment had ended abruptly under circumstances that weren't detailed in his file, but cross-referencing with other databases revealed that he had been quietly transferred after an incident involving classified information security. The details were heavily redacted, but it appeared he had been suspected of deliberately compromising operational security during a training exercise. The third member of what Sarah had begun thinking of as the sabotage cell was Petty Officer First Class James Crawford, the team's demolitions expert. Crawford's record was cleaner than the others, but Sarah noticed that his financial situation showed some irregularities. He had recently purchased an expensive motorcycle and had been making large cash deposits that seemed inconsistent with his Navy salary. As she dug deeper into the investigation, Sarah began to realize that the sabotage campaign against her might be connected to something much larger and more serious. The level of sophistication in some of the electronic tampering suggested access to specialized equipment that wouldn't normally be available to individual team members. Someone with significant resources and technical expertise was supporting their efforts. Monday morning brought new challenges. Lieutenant Commander Blake called Sarah into his office for what he described as a frank discussion about her performance and future with the team. Blake was a fair man, but he was also responsible for maintaining team effectiveness, and the recent communication failures had not gone unnoticed by his superiors. "Martinez, I want to be straight with you," Blake began, settling behind his desk with a serious expression. "The brass is asking questions about the intelligence support failures we've been experiencing. Captain Morrison specifically mentioned his concerns after last week's exercise." Sarah had expected this conversation, but hearing it confirmed still sent a chill down her spine. Captain Morrison was the commanding officer of the entire Naval Special Warfare Unit, and his opinion would effectively determine her future in the SEAL community. "Sir, I understand their concerns," Sarah replied carefully. "I've been working to identify and resolve the technical issues that have been affecting my equipment." Blake leaned forward. "That's what I want to discuss. These aren't random equipment failures, are they? Someone's been sabotaging your gear." The direct question caught Sarah off guard. She had assumed Blake was unaware of the deliberate nature of the problems she had been experiencing. "Sir, I have suspected that some of the equipment failures weren't accidental," she admitted. "Why didn't you report this sooner?" Blake's tone was sharp with disappointment. If team members are engaging in sabotage, that's a serious disciplinary matter that should have been brought to my attention immediately. Sarah chose her words carefully. I needed to be certain before making accusations against team members. The sabotage was subtle and could have been attributed to equipment malfunction. I've been gathering evidence to support my concerns. Blake studied her for a long moment. What kind of evidence? Technical analysis of the tampering, documentation of the patterns of failure, and some preliminary investigation into who had access to my equipment at the relevant times. And what have you found? Sarah hesitated. She had gathered substantial evidence pointing to Thompson, Kowalski, and Crawford, but she also suspected there were larger issues involved that went beyond simple hazing or intimidation. Making accusations without complete proof could backfire spectacularly. Sir, I'd prefer to complete my investigation before making specific allegations. I want to be absolutely certain of my facts before potentially damaging anyone's career. Blake's expression suggested he wasn't entirely satisfied with her response, but he nodded slowly. Fair enough. But, Martinez, tomorrow's exercise is crucial. Captain Morrison will be observing personally, and Admiral Hendricks from Naval Special Warfare Command will also be present. If there are any more communication failures, I won't be able to protect your position on this team. The stakes couldn't be higher. Admiral Hendricks was responsible for SEAL operations across multiple teams and had the authority to not only remove Sarah from Team 7, but also to effectively end her chances of ever working with special operations units again. That evening, Sarah implemented the final components of her security plan. She had identified the most likely methods of sabotage based on the previous incidents and had prepared countermeasures for each possibility. More importantly, she had set up what she privately called her insurance policy, a comprehensive monitoring system that would provide irrefutable evidence of any tampering attempts. She also prepared backup plans for every possible scenario. If her primary communication system was compromised, she had hidden secondary systems that the saboteurs wouldn't know about. If her computer systems were attacked, she had offline backup databases that would allow her to continue providing intelligence support. If her power systems were disrupted, she had concealed backup power supplies that could keep her essential equipment running. The night before the exercise, Sarah conducted a final check of all her equipment and security measures. Everything was in place, and she had documented every component and configuration with photographs and technical specifications. If anything was altered, she would know immediately and would have proof of the tampering. As she was completing her preparations, she noticed movement in the equipment bay where her gear was stored. Using her hidden cameras, she watched as Thompson, Kowalski, and Crawford entered the area and began examining her equipment cases. They were careful and systematic, clearly looking for her backup systems and security measures. Sarah watched in fascination as they attempted to locate and disable the security devices she had installed. Their level of expertise was impressive, suggesting they had received specialized training in electronic surveillance and counter-surveillance techniques. This wasn't amateur hour hazing. These men were conducting a professional-level intelligence operation. What surprised her most was their use of sophisticated electronic scanning equipment to detect her hidden monitoring devices. The gear they were using wasn't standard Navy issue and would have cost tens of thousands of dollars on the civilian market. Someone was providing them with resources that far exceeded anything they could afford on their military salaries. Thompson appeared to be the leader of the group, directing the others and making decisions about which systems to target. Kowalski focused on the electronic components, demonstrating knowledge of radio frequency systems that went well beyond his official training. Crawford handled the physical aspects of the sabotage, using specialized tools to access equipment cases without leaving obvious signs of tampering. They worked for nearly 2 hours, believing they were unobserved. Sarah documented everything through her hidden camera system, building a comprehensive record of their activities. By the time they finished, she had enough evidence to not only prove the sabotage, but also to raise serious questions about where they had obtained their equipment and training. More concerning was the scope of their sabotage efforts. They weren't just disabling her communication equipment. They were installing their own monitoring devices that would allow them to intercept and modify her communications in real time. This went far beyond simple harassment and entered the realm of serious security violations. Sarah realized she was dealing with something much more dangerous than she had initially suspected. The level of sophistication and resources involved suggested either foreign intelligence involvement or domestic corruption at a very high level. Either way, she was in over her head and needed to be extremely careful about how she proceeded. The exercise began at dawn with Sarah positioned in a new command post that had been constructed specifically for the high-level observation. Admiral Hendricks and Captain Morrison were present, along with several other senior officers she didn't recognize. The pressure was intense, and she could feel everyone's eyes on her as she conducted her pre-mission equipment checks. Everything appeared to be functioning normally, but Sarah knew that the real test would come once the exercise began and Thompson's group attempted to implement whatever sabotage plan they had prepared. The scenario was complex, involving a multi-phase operation that would test every aspect of the team's capabilities. Sarah's intelligence support would be crucial throughout, requiring her to monitor multiple communication networks, analyze enemy movement patterns, and provide real-time tactical recommendations. For the first hour, everything proceeded smoothly. Sarah intercepted and analyzed enemy communications, built detailed intelligence pictures, and provided timely support to the assault teams. Her reports were precise and actionable, demonstrating the value that competent intelligence support could provide to special operations. Then, the sabotage began. Her primary radio system started experiencing the same intermittent failures that had plagued previous exercises. However, this time Sarah was prepared. She smoothly switched to her concealed backup system while appearing to struggle with the malfunctioning primary radio. To observers, it looked like she was experiencing the same technical difficulties that had undermined her previous performances. But instead of being blind to enemy communications, Sarah was actually receiving clearer signals than ever before. Her hidden monitoring system was capturing not only the exercise communications, but also the real-time coordination between Thompson and his associates as they attempted to sabotage her performance. What she heard shocked her. The saboteurs weren't working alone. They were receiving instructions from someone outside the exercise who was monitoring the proceedings and directing their efforts. The voice was encrypted and difficult to identify, but the level of detailed knowledge about the exercise scenario suggested someone with high-level access to the planning process. As the exercise continued, Sarah found herself fighting a complex electronic warfare battle while simultaneously supporting the SEAL team's operations. Thompson and his group were attempting to feed her false information through compromised communication channels while blocking legitimate intelligence. Meanwhile, she was using her concealed systems to gather accurate intelligence while pretending to struggle with equipment failures. The breakthrough came when she intercepted a communication that revealed the true scope of what she was facing. The voice directing the sabotage operation mentioned the client and discussed payment for ensuring that the Martinez problem is permanently resolved. This wasn't just about hazing or protecting SEAL Brotherhood. Someone was paying to have her career destroyed. More disturbing was the mention of Phase 2 operations that would begin after her removal from the team. The details were vague, but it appeared that her sabotage was just the first step in a larger plan that involved compromising the team's operational security for the benefit of unknown parties. Sarah realized she was witnessing the early stages of what appeared to be either a foreign intelligence operation or domestic espionage targeting one of the Navy's most elite units. The implications were staggering, and she found herself in the position of being the only person aware of the threat. While maintaining the appearance of struggling with equipment problems, Sarah began systematically documenting everything she was observing. She recorded the intercepted communications, photographed the sabotage activities, and began building a comprehensive intelligence file that would be needed to expose the conspiracy. The exercise reached its climax with a complex hostage rescue scenario that required precise coordination between multiple assault teams. Sarah's intelligence support was crucial for identifying hostage locations and enemy defensive positions. Despite the ongoing sabotage efforts, she managed to provide accurate and timely intelligence that enabled the teams to complete their mission successfully. As the exercise concluded, Admiral Hendricks and the other observers gathered for the after-action review. Sarah knew this would be the moment of truth. Either her documented evidence would be sufficient to expose the conspiracy, or she would be removed from the team and lose any chance of stopping whatever larger operation was planned. Lieutenant Commander Blake began the review by praising the team's tactical performance, noting their adaptability and professionalism. Then, he turned to the intelligence support portion of the exercise. The intelligence support showed significant improvement over previous exercises, Blake reported. Despite some initial equipment problems, Petty Officer Martinez was able to provide timely and accurate intelligence throughout the operation. Admiral Hendricks nodded but looked skeptical. My understanding is that there have been ongoing problems with communication failures during previous exercises. What's changed? This was Sarah's moment. She stood up, her heart pounding, and made a decision that would either vindicate her or end her career. Admiral, if I may, I'd like to address the communication problems we've been experiencing. I believe I've identified the source of the issues, and it's not equipment failure. The room fell silent. She could see Thompson and his associates exchanging worried glances while the senior officers focused their attention on her. I have documented evidence of deliberate sabotage of my communication equipment conducted by members of this team over a period of several weeks. More concerning, I have evidence that this sabotage is being directed by outside parties for purposes that appear to involve compromising the operational security of this unit. Admiral Hendricks leaned forward, his expression grave. That's a very serious allegation, Petty Officer. I hope you have substantial evidence to support such claims. Sarah reached into her equipment case and withdrew a tablet computer containing the documentation she had compiled. Yes, sir. I have video evidence of the sabotage activities, recordings of communications between the saboteurs and their outside controllers, and technical analysis proving deliberate tampering with my equipment. As she handed over the tablet, she could see Thompson starting to rise from his seat, his face flushed with anger or panic. But before he could speak, Admiral Hendricks raised his hand for silence. I think we need to review this evidence very carefully, the Admiral said. Senior Chief, I want this room secured immediately. No one leaves until we've had a chance to examine what Petty Officer Martinez has provided. Sarah had just triggered what would become one of the largest security investigations in Naval Special Warfare Command history. But, as she watched the faces around the room, she realized that her real challenges were just beginning. The tension in the briefing room was thick enough to cut with a knife as Admiral Hendricks reviewed the evidence on Sarah's tablet. Senior Chief Ramirez had posted guards at the exits, and the room had been swept for electronic surveillance devices. Thompson, Kowalski, and Crawford sat in stony silence while the other team members looked confused and increasingly concerned. Admiral Hendricks studied the video footage showing the three men systematically tampering with Sarah's equipment. The high-definition cameras had captured everything in detail: the sophisticated scanning equipment they had used, the methodical way they had installed monitoring devices, and, most damning of all, their use of encrypted communication devices to coordinate with outside controllers. Captain Morrison, I want these three men placed under immediate arrest pending a full investigation, Admiral Hendricks ordered. And I want the Naval Criminal Investigative Service contacted immediately. This appears to involve potential espionage charges. Thompson finally broke his silence, his voice tight with controlled anger. Admiral, I request permission to speak. These allegations are completely false. Petty Officer Martinez is obviously trying to cover up her own incompetence by making wild accusations against team members who questioned her qualifications. Admiral Hendricks didn't look up from the tablet. Mr. Thompson, unless you can explain how Petty Officer Martinez fabricated high-definition video footage of you and your associates using sophisticated electronic surveillance equipment to sabotage her communications gear, I suggest you remain silent until you've consulted with legal counsel. Lieutenant Commander Blake looked stunned as he watched the video evidence. I can't believe this, he muttered. These men have been under my command for over a year. I never suspected anything like this. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and apprehension as she watched the investigation unfold. She had successfully exposed the sabotage conspiracy, but she knew this was just the beginning. The recordings she had captured suggested a much larger operation that went far beyond these three men. Admiral Hendricks handed the tablet to his aide. I want every piece of evidence on here analyzed by our technical specialists. I also want a complete security review of this entire facility. If we have a compromised unit, I need to know the full extent of the breach. As the arrested men were led away by naval security personnel, Admiral Hendricks turned his attention back to Sarah. Petty Officer Martinez, your quick thinking and investigative skills may have prevented a serious security breach. However, I need to understand exactly how long you've known about this situation and why you didn't report it through proper channels sooner. Sarah had prepared for this question, knowing that her decision to conduct her own investigation rather than immediately reporting her suspicions could be viewed as a serious breach of protocol. Sir, I first suspected equipment tampering about 3 weeks ago, but the evidence was circumstantial and could have been attributed to equipment failure. As an intelligence specialist, I've been trained to gather comprehensive evidence before making accusations that could destroy careers and compromise ongoing operations. I was also concerned that if I made premature allegations, the real perpetrators might cover their tracks before we could identify the full scope of the conspiracy. Admiral Hendricks nodded slowly. Your reasoning was sound, but in the future, suspected security breaches must be reported immediately regardless of the strength of the initial evidence. That said, your documentation skills were exemplary, and your evidence appears to be comprehensive enough to support prosecution. Captain Morrison stepped forward. Admiral, what are the implications for Team 7's operational status? If we have a security breach of this magnitude, shouldn't the entire team be stood down pending investigation? That's exactly what concerns me, Admiral Hendricks replied. We need to determine if there are other compromised personnel in this unit, or if this conspiracy extends to other SEAL teams. I'm ordering a complete operational security review of all naval special warfare units on this coast. Over the next several hours, Sarah found herself at the center of an expanding investigation that would eventually involve multiple federal agencies. The encrypted communication devices that Thompson and his associates had been using were analyzed by NSA cryptographers who determined that the encryption protocols were of foreign origin, specifically matching patterns associated with Chinese intelligence services. The financial investigation into Crawford's mysterious income sources revealed a complex network of offshore accounts and cryptocurrency transactions that appeared designed to obscure the source of payments. The amounts involved were substantial. Over $200,000 had been distributed among the three conspirators over the past 8 months. Even more concerning was the discovery that the sophisticated surveillance equipment they had been using was not commercially available. The devices had been manufactured specifically for intelligence services and contained components that were controlled under international arms trafficking agreements. Someone with significant resources and government-level access had provided the equipment. Sarah spent the rest of the week being debriefed by investigators from NCIS, FBI, and other agencies she wasn't allowed to identify. They were particularly interested in her technical analysis of the sabotage methods and her assessment of how long the conspiracy had been active. Based on the sophistication of their methods and the integration of their surveillance systems with our communication networks, I believe they had been planning this operation for at least 6 months before I arrived. Sarah explained to the lead NCS investigator. The sabotage campaign against me was likely a response to my assignment to the team, suggesting they viewed my intelligence expertise as a threat to their activities. The investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Special Agent Patricia Wells, reviewed Sarah's technical documentation with obvious appreciation for her thoroughness. Your background in signal intelligence was crucial to detecting this conspiracy. A less experienced person might have attributed the equipment failures to normal technical problems. That's what they were counting on, Sarah replied. They selected sabotage methods that would appear to be random equipment failures unless someone had the technical expertise to identify the deliberate patterns. As the investigation expanded, more disturbing details emerged. The analysis of communications intercepts revealed that the conspirators had been providing detailed intelligence about Team 7's training exercises, operational procedures, and security protocols to their outside controllers. While the team hadn't conducted any actual combat operations during the period of the conspiracy, the intelligence they had gathered would have been invaluable for planning operations against SEAL teams in the future. Even worse, the investigation revealed that similar infiltration attempts were being made against other special operations units across all branches of the military. The conspiracy that Sarah had uncovered was part of a larger foreign intelligence operation designed to compromise American Special Forces capabilities. The broader implications were staggering. If successful, the operation could have provided hostile nations with detailed knowledge of SEAL tactics, training methods, and operational procedures. The intelligence could have been used to develop countermeasures that would have significantly reduced the effectiveness of American Special Operations Forces worldwide. A week into the investigation, Sarah was summoned to a meeting with Admiral Hendricks and several other senior officers she didn't recognize. The meeting was held in a secure conference room that had been specially prepared for classified discussions. Petty Officer Martinez, Admiral Hendricks began, "The investigation you initiated has uncovered one of the most serious security breaches in Naval Special Warfare Command history. We've reviewed similar incidents at other installations where trained intelligence personnel missed the signs of infiltration because the conspirators were more careful about concealing their activities. Your background in electronic surveillance and your persistence in gathering evidence were crucial factors in exposing this conspiracy." Admiral Hendricks consulted his notes before continuing. "The immediate question is what happens next for you and for Team 7. The 3 compromised team members are facing serious federal charges, and the team will need to be reconstituted with new personnel. We're also implementing new security protocols that will require additional training for all special operations personnel." Sarah had been wondering about her future status throughout the investigation. Her position with Team 7 had been compromised by the conspiracy, and she wasn't sure if she would be reassigned to another unit or returned to traditional intelligence duties. "Sir, what are my options going forward?" Admiral Hendricks smiled for the first time since the investigation had begun. "That's what we want to discuss with you. Your performance during this crisis has been exemplary, and your investigative skills have proven invaluable. We have several opportunities that would take advantage of your unique capabilities." The Air Force officer leaned forward. "One option would be assignment to a new joint task force that's being established to investigate and prevent similar infiltration attempts against special operations units. Your experience with this case would make you extremely valuable in identifying and countering future conspiracies." Another officer, this one wearing civilian clothes, spoke up. "There's also an opportunity with a classified program that investigates security threats against military intelligence operations. Your background in both signals intelligence and counterintelligence would be directly applicable." Admiral Hendricks raised his hand to interrupt. "Before we get ahead of ourselves, there's the question of what happens with Team 7. Lieutenant Commander Blake has specifically requested that you remain with the team as their intelligence specialist. The other team members have expressed complete confidence in your capabilities, and they believe your presence would actually enhance their operational security." This surprised Sarah. She had assumed that the controversy surrounding the investigation would make it difficult for her to remain with the SEAL team. "Sir, I thought the security breach might disqualify me from special operations support." "On the contrary," Admiral Hendricks replied, "your successful identification and documentation of the conspiracy has actually elevated your security clearance and increased demand for your services. You've proven that you can not only provide excellent intelligence support, but also protect operational security under extremely challenging circumstances." Lieutenant Commander Blake, who had been quietly listening to the discussion, finally spoke up. "Martinez, I want to be completely clear about something. When you first arrived at Team 7, some of the men questioned whether you had the capability to keep up with SEAL operations. What you've proven over the past month is that you have capabilities that go far beyond what any of us expected. You didn't just keep up, you potentially saved our entire unit from catastrophic compromise." Sarah felt a wave of emotion at Blake's words. The validation from the team leader meant more to her than any commendation or promotion could. "The choice is yours," Admiral Hendricks continued. "You can remain with Team 7 and continue in your role as intelligence specialist, or you can accept assignment to one of these specialized counterintelligence positions. Either way, you'll be promoted to Chief Petty Officer, and your performance during this investigation will be reflected in your permanent record. Sarah didn't need time to consider her options. Despite everything she had experienced, she still believed in the mission of providing intelligence support to special operations teams. The fact that Team 7 still wanted her after everything that had happened was the highest compliment she could receive. "Sir, I'd like to remain with Team 7 if that's acceptable to Lieutenant Commander Blake and the rest of the team." Blake nodded immediately. "Absolutely. We'd be honored to have you continue as our intelligence specialist." Admiral Hendricks made notes on his paperwork. "Very well. You'll remain with Team 7, but you'll also serve as a special advisor to the new security review program. Your experience with this case will be valuable in training other intelligence personnel to identify similar threats." As the meeting concluded, Sarah reflected on how dramatically her situation had changed in just a few weeks. She had arrived at Team 7 as an outsider trying to prove her worth to a skeptical group of elite operators. She was now leaving as a trusted team member whose investigative skills had potentially saved American special operations capabilities from catastrophic compromise. But she also knew that her real challenges were just beginning. The conspiracy she had uncovered was just one part of a larger foreign intelligence operation, and there would certainly be future attempts to infiltrate and compromise special operations units. Her role in detecting and countering those threats would require constant vigilance and continued development of her counterintelligence skills. The investigation had also revealed how vulnerable even elite military units could be to sophisticated infiltration attempts. The conspirators had successfully operated for months without detection, and they might have succeeded indefinitely if Sarah hadn't happened to be assigned to the team with the specific technical skills needed to identify their activities. More concerning was the realization that similar attempts were probably being made against other units, some of which might not have the benefit of an experienced counterintelligence specialist to detect the threat. Sarah's success had exposed one conspiracy, but it had also revealed the scope of a much larger problem that would require sustained effort to address. As she prepared to return to Team 7 with her new responsibilities, Sarah understood that her experience had fundamentally changed not just her own career, but also the way the military approached security for special operations units. The protocols and procedures that would be developed based on her investigation would hopefully prevent future infiltration attempts and protect the capabilities that were crucial to national security. The next phase of her career would involve not just supporting Team 7's operations, but also sharing her experience with other units and helping to develop the defensive measures needed to protect American special operations forces from increasingly sophisticated threats. It was a responsibility she took seriously, knowing that the security of her fellow service members depended on the effectiveness of the measures they implemented. 3 months after exposing the sabotage conspiracy, Sarah found herself in a very different position within Team 7. The 3 new team members who had replaced Thompson, Kowalski, and Crawford were professional and respectful, but more importantly, they understood that their intelligence specialist was someone who had proven herself under the most challenging circumstances possible. The new dynamic was evident during their first major training exercise since the security breach. Petty Officer Second Class Marcus Johnson, Thompson's replacement as breacher, approached Sarah during the pre-mission briefing with a question about enemy communication patterns. "Chief Martinez," he began, using her new rank, "I've been reviewing the intelligence estimates, and I'm wondering if you think the enemy might be using burst transmissions to coordinate their patrol schedules." Sarah appreciated both the technical sophistication of the question and the respectful way it was asked. The new team members had clearly been briefed about her background and capabilities, and they were treating her as a valued team asset rather than an unwelcome outsider. "That's an excellent observation," she replied. "I've been monitoring several frequencies that show patterns consistent with burst transmission protocols. I'll set up additional monitoring during the exercise to see if we can intercept and decode their coordination signals." Lieutenant Commander Blake watched the interaction with obvious satisfaction. The team chemistry that had been disrupted by the conspiracy was rebuilding stronger than before, with Sarah now firmly established as an integral part of the unit's operational capability. The exercise itself went flawlessly. Sarah's intelligence support was comprehensive and accurate, providing real-time updates that allowed the team to adapt their tactics and complete their mission with exceptional efficiency. More importantly, her enhanced security measures ensured that their communications remained secure throughout the operation. But Sarah's responsibilities had expanded far beyond supporting Team 7's operations. As promised, she had been assigned additional duties as a special advisor to the new Operational Security Review Program that Admiral Hendricks had established in response to her investigation. This meant she spent 2 days each week traveling to other naval special warfare facilities, sharing her experience and helping to implement enhanced security protocols. Her first major assignment in this new role took her to the Naval Special Warfare Facility in Virginia Beach, where another SEAL team had experienced what appeared to be routine equipment failures during recent exercises. The pattern was eerily similar to what she had experienced with Team 7, and Sarah suspected they might be dealing with another infiltration attempt. Working with the team's intelligence specialist, Petty Officer First Class David Kim, Sarah conducted a comprehensive review of the equipment failures and communication anomalies. Kim was experienced and competent, but he lacked Sarah's specialized background in counterintelligence and electronic surveillance. The failures seem random, Kim explained as they reviewed the incident reports. Different equipment, different times, different types of problems. I've been attributing them to the age of our gear and normal wear and tear. Sarah studied the documentation carefully, looking for the subtle patterns that had revealed the conspiracy against her own team. What she found was both disturbing and familiar. David, these failures aren't random. Look at the timing. They consistently occurred during the most critical phases of exercises when intelligence support would be most valuable. And notice that the types of failures are always ones that would degrade performance without causing complete system shutdown. She pointed to specific entries in the maintenance logs. Here, and here. These are exactly the same types of component failures that I experienced. Someone is using the same playbook. Kim looked skeptical. You think we have saboteurs on our team too? I think we need to find out. Do you have access to security camera footage of your equipment storage areas? Limited coverage, but yes. Let's review everything from the past 3 months, looking specifically for after-hours access to your gear. They spent the next 2 days conducting a thorough investigation of the Virginia Beach facility. Sarah shared the technical analysis methods she had developed, showing Kim how to identify subtle signs of electronic tampering that might not be obvious to someone without specialized training. Their investigation revealed a pattern of unauthorized access to the equipment storage areas, always occurring during off-duty hours when the facility was lightly staffed. The individuals involved were careful to avoid direct camera coverage, but Sarah's experience with surveillance techniques allowed her to piece together their activities from partial images and circumstantial evidence. More concerning, the investigation revealed that the Virginia Beach infiltrators were using the same type of sophisticated surveillance equipment that had been employed against Team 7. This confirmed that they were dealing with a larger, coordinated operation rather than isolated incidents. Sarah immediately contacted Admiral Hendricks with her findings. Within hours, NCIS agents were on site conducting arrests and securing evidence. The investigation revealed another cell of 3 compromised personnel who had been operating for over 4 months without detection. The pattern continued over the following weeks as Sarah visited other facilities. Each location showed similar signs of infiltration, with small groups of personnel conducting sophisticated sabotage operations designed to degrade intelligence capabilities without being detected. The scope of the foreign intelligence operation was far larger than anyone had initially suspected. During a security briefing at Naval Special Warfare Command Headquarters, Sarah presented her findings to a group of senior officers and intelligence officials. The briefing room was packed with representatives from all branches of the military and several federal agencies. Based on my investigations at 7 different facilities, I believe we're dealing with a coordinated foreign intelligence operation that has been targeting our special operations units for at least 2 years, Sarah reported. The methods are consistent across all locations, suggesting centralized planning and coordination. Admiral Hendricks, who was chairing the briefing, asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Chief Martinez, what's your assessment of how many personnel might be compromised? Sarah had been dreading this question because her analysis suggested the problem was much larger than anyone wanted to admit. Sir, based on the patterns I've identified and the resources required to conduct operations at this scale, I estimate we may be dealing with compromised personnel at as many as 15 to 20 different facilities nationwide. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. The idea that foreign intelligence services had successfully infiltrated such a large portion of America's special operations community was almost too devastating to contemplate. General Patricia Sullivan, representing the Joint Chiefs of Staff, leaned forward with obvious concern. Chief Martinez, if your assessment is correct, we're looking at one of the most serious security breaches in modern military history. What's your recommendation for addressing this threat? Sarah had prepared for this question and had developed a comprehensive response plan based on her field experience. Ma'am, I recommend a three-phase approach. First, we implement immediate enhanced security protocols at all facilities while conducting rapid assessments to identify potential compromised personnel. Second, we establish permanent counterintelligence teams at each major facility with personnel trained in the specific techniques needed to detect these infiltration attempts. Third, we develop new operational security procedures that make it much more difficult for infiltrators to access sensitive information even if they do successfully penetrate our units. The briefing continued for several more hours as Sarah detailed her specific recommendations for each phase of the response plan. Her presentation was thorough and professional, demonstrating not only her technical expertise, but also her understanding of the broader strategic implications of the security breach. Following the briefing, Sarah was approached by several senior officers who expressed interest in having her assigned to their commands. The demand for her specialized expertise had grown dramatically as the scope of the infiltration problem became clear. Admiral Hendricks pulled her aside after the formal briefing concluded. Chief Martinez, you've become something of a hot commodity in the intelligence community. I've received requests for your services from commands all over the country. Sir, I'm honored by the interest, but I'd prefer to continue working with Team 7 while supporting the broader security review program. I think I can be most effective by maintaining my operational experience while applying it to counterintelligence challenges. Admiral Hendricks nodded approvingly. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Your combination of operational experience and counterintelligence expertise is unique, and you're right that maintaining both aspects of your career will keep you most effective. He consulted his notes before continuing. I have a proposal for you. We're establishing a new position, Chief of Operational Security for Naval Special Warfare Command. It would be a permanent billet that would keep you affiliated with Team 7 while giving you command responsibility for security oversight across all our units. You'd be promoted to Senior Chief and would have significant autonomy in how you approach the mission. The offer was attractive, but Sarah wanted to understand exactly what it would entail. Sir, what would my specific responsibilities be in this position? You'd oversee the implementation of enhanced security protocols at all facilities, manage the training program for counterintelligence personnel, and serve as the lead investigator for any suspected security breaches. You'd also continue to deploy with Team 7 for operational missions, ensuring that you maintain current experience with special operations procedures. The position would give Sarah the authority and resources to implement the comprehensive security reforms she believed were necessary to protect special operations units from future infiltration attempts. It would also allow her to continue working with the team that had become her military family. Sir, I accept the position. Admiral Hendricks smiled broadly. Excellent. Your first major assignment will be overseeing the security review of Naval Special Warfare Group 2. Intelligence indicates they may have the most serious infiltration problem of any unit we've examined so far. Sarah's promotion ceremony was held the following week in the same briefing room where she had first presented her evidence of the conspiracy against Team 7. The entire team was present, along with Admiral Hendricks and several other senior officers. As Admiral Hendricks pinned the Senior Chief Petty Officer insignia on her uniform, Sarah reflected on how dramatically her career had changed in just 6 months. She had arrived at Team 7 as an untested intelligence specialist hoping to prove herself worthy of working with elite operators. She was now the Navy's leading expert on counterintelligence threats against special operations units, with command responsibility for protecting thousands of personnel from sophisticated foreign intelligence operations. Lieutenant Commander Blake spoke during the ceremony, addressing not just Sarah's technical achievements, but also her character and dedication to the mission. Senior Chief Martinez represents everything we value in the special operations community, Blake said. She demonstrated exceptional skill, courage, and persistence in exposing a serious threat to our operational security. More importantly, she showed the kind of character and integrity that makes someone worthy of the trust we place in our teammates. The words meant more to Sarah than any commendation or medal could. She had earned not just the respect of the SEAL community, but also their trust, which was far more valuable. After the ceremony, the team gathered for a celebration dinner at a local restaurant. The atmosphere was relaxed and friendly, with Sarah fully integrated into the group dynamic as both a technical expert and a valued teammate. Petty Officer Rodriguez, the team's sniper, raised his glass in a toast. To Senior Chief Martinez, the person who proved that the most dangerous weapon in the SEAL arsenal is a smart woman with a mission. The toast drew laughter and applause from the team, but Sarah understood the serious message behind the humor. She had demonstrated that intelligence and determination could be just as valuable as physical strength and combat skills in protecting national security. As the evening continued, Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction about the direction her career had taken. She had found her calling in the intersection of operational support and counterintelligence work, and she was making a meaningful contribution to protecting the capabilities that were crucial to American national security. But she also knew that her most challenging assignments lay ahead. The infiltration threat was evolving and adapting to the countermeasures being implemented, and future attempts would likely be even more sophisticated than what she had already encountered. Her success in detecting and countering these threats would require continued development of her skills and constant vigilance against increasingly capable adversaries. The celebration dinner marked not just recognition of her past achievements, but also preparation for the greater responsibilities and challenges that awaited her as the Navy's senior counterintelligence specialist for special operations. The knowledge that hundreds of personnel and critical national security capabilities depended on her expertise was both humbling and motivating as she prepared for the next phase of her career. 1 year after her promotion to senior chief, Sarah stood in the secure briefing room at Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters, preparing to deliver what would be her most important presentation yet. The audience included the Secretary of the Navy, the Chief of Naval Operations, and representatives from the intelligence community's highest levels. The topic was the comprehensive results of her year-long investigation into foreign infiltration of American special operations units. The numbers she was about to present were staggering. Through systematic investigation of 23 different facilities, her team had identified and arrested 47 compromised personnel operating in coordinated cells across the entire special operations community. The investigation had revealed the largest foreign intelligence penetration of American military forces since World War II. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah began. Over the past 12 months, our investigation has uncovered a systematic Chinese intelligence operation codenamed Deep Current that has been targeting American special operations capabilities for over 3 years. The scope and sophistication of this operation represents a fundamental challenge to how we approach operational security in the modern era. She activated the main display screen, showing a map of the United States with red markers indicating every facility where foreign agents had been discovered. The density of markers was sobering. Nearly every major special operations installation had been targeted. The operation was coordinated through a network of Chinese intelligence officers operating under diplomatic cover, supported by a sophisticated financial system that moved over $8 million to compromised personnel over the 3-year period. The intelligence gathered included detailed information about training procedures, tactical methods, equipment capabilities, and operational planning processes. Secretary of the Navy Michael Chun leaned forward with obvious concern. Senior Chief Martinez, what's your assessment of the damage caused by this operation? Sarah had been preparing for this question throughout her investigation. The assessment was complex because much of the intelligence gathered had been about training exercises and procedures rather than actual operational plans. Sir, the immediate operational impact appears to be limited because most of the intelligence gathered was about training rather than actual missions. However, the long-term strategic impact could be severe. The adversary now has detailed knowledge of how we train and prepare our forces, which could be used to develop countermeasures that would significantly reduce our operational effectiveness in future conflicts. She clicked to the next slide, showing examples of the specific types of intelligence that had been compromised. They gathered information about everything from individual operator selection criteria to team-level tactical procedures. This knowledge could be used to predict our behavior, identify our personnel, and develop specific countermeasures for our equipment and methods. Admiral Jennifer Walsh, representing the Joint Chiefs of Staff, asked about the broader implications for military security. Senior Chief, how do you assess the likelihood that similar operations are targeting other parts of our military? Ma'am, based on the sophistication and scale of Deep Current, I believe we must assume that similar operations are targeting conventional forces, intelligence units, and support organizations throughout the military. The methods we've identified are too advanced and well-resourced to be limited to special operations alone. Sarah spent the next hour detailing the specific countermeasures that had been implemented based on her investigation. Enhanced security protocols were now standard at all special operations facilities. New personnel screening procedures had been developed to identify potential security risks before they could access sensitive information. Most importantly, permanent counterintelligence teams had been established at major installations, trained specifically in the techniques needed to detect sophisticated infiltration attempts. The most significant change has been cultural, Sarah explained. We've moved from a reactive security posture to a proactive one. Personnel are now trained to recognize and report suspicious activities, and we have systematic procedures for investigating potential security threats before they can cause significant damage. The results were already visible in the statistics she presented. In the 6 months since implementing the new protocols, 3 additional infiltration attempts had been detected and stopped before the foreign agents could establish themselves within targeted units. The enhanced security measures were working, but they required constant vigilance and continued refinement. Following her presentation, Sarah was asked to participate in a classified discussion about the broader strategic implications of the Deep Current investigation. The conversation involved senior officials from the CIA, NSA, and Defense Intelligence Agency, focusing on how the Chinese operation fit into larger patterns of foreign intelligence activity against American military capabilities. The sophistication of Deep Current suggests a major shift in Chinese intelligence priorities, explained CIA Deputy Director Sarah Patterson. They're moving from primarily focusing on technological intelligence to developing detailed knowledge of our operational capabilities and methods. Sarah's experience with the investigation provided crucial insights into the adversary's methods and objectives. Based on our analysis of their intelligence gathering priorities, they appear to be preparing for potential conflicts where detailed knowledge of our special operations capabilities would be tactically significant. They weren't just gathering general information. They were focused on specific aspects of our training and procedures that would be most valuable in countering our forces. The discussion continued for several hours, with Sarah providing detailed technical analysis of the communication methods, financial systems, and operational procedures that the Chinese intelligence services had used. Her recommendations for defending against future operations were incorporated into new national security directives that would affect military security procedures across all branches of the armed forces. Later that evening, Sarah returned to Team 7 for what had become a monthly tradition, a team dinner where she could reconnect with the operational side of her responsibilities. Despite her expanded duties, she had maintained her position as the team's intelligence specialist, deploying with them on missions and ensuring that her counterintelligence expertise remained grounded in current operational experience. The team had completed 3 successful missions over the past year, including a hostage rescue operation in Africa and two counterterrorism missions in the Middle East. Sarah's intelligence support had been crucial to the success of each operation, and her enhanced security protocols had ensured that sensitive operational information remained protected throughout the deployment cycle. Lieutenant Commander Blake, now a commander and still leading Team 7, raised his glass in a toast as the dinner began. To Senior Chief Martinez, who has shown us that the best defense against our enemies is having someone smarter than they are on our side. The sentiment drew laughter and applause from the team, but Sarah understood the serious message behind Blake's words. The deep current investigation had revealed how vulnerable even elite military units could be to sophisticated intelligence operations. Protecting against future threats would require the same level of expertise and dedication that the adversaries brought to their infiltration attempts. Petty Officer Johnson, now the senior medic and one of Sarah's closest friends on the team, spoke up during the dinner conversation. Senior Chief, I've been thinking about something you said during one of our security briefings. You mentioned that we need to assume our adversaries are always adapting and improving their methods. How do we stay ahead of that evolution? It was an excellent question that got to the heart of Sarah's current challenges. The countermeasures that had been successful against deep current were already being tested by new infiltration attempts that used different methods and approaches. The key is maintaining our own capacity for innovation and adaptation, Sarah replied. We can't just implement static security measures and assume they'll remain effective indefinitely. We need to continuously evolve our defensive capabilities, just like our adversaries are evolving their offensive ones. She paused to consider how much detail she could share about ongoing classified operations. Without getting into specifics, I can tell you that we're already seeing attempts to exploit weaknesses in our current security protocols. The adversaries learned from the failure of deep current, and they're developing new approaches that are designed to avoid the detection methods we used to expose their previous operations. The conversation continued late into the evening, with team members asking detailed questions about security procedures and sharing their own observations about potential vulnerabilities they had noticed during recent operations. Sarah valued these discussions because they provided ground-level insights that complemented her strategic oversight responsibilities. As the evening concluded, Sarah reflected on how much her life and career had changed since that first day when she had arrived at Team 7 as an untested intelligence specialist. She had proven herself not just as a competent supporter of special operations, but as a crucial defender of national security capabilities. More importantly, she had found her calling in work that combined operational excellence with strategic impact. Her daily responsibilities involved not just supporting individual missions, but protecting the entire special operations community from threats that could compromise American military capabilities worldwide. The recognition of her contributions had been substantial. In addition to her promotion to Senior Chief, she had received the Defense Meritorious Service Medal for her role in exposing deep current, and she had been selected for promotion to Master Chief Petty Officer, which would make her one of the youngest personnel ever to achieve that rank in the intelligence community. But the recognition that meant the most to her came from the team she supported. She had earned their trust and respect through demonstrated performance under the most challenging circumstances, and she had proven that intelligence specialists could be valuable teammates rather than just external support personnel. Looking toward the future, Sarah knew that her most important work was still ahead. The threat landscape was constantly evolving, with new adversaries developing increasingly sophisticated methods for targeting American military capabilities. Her role in detecting and countering these threats would require continued innovation and vigilance. She was also involved in developing the next generation of counterintelligence specialists who would eventually take over her responsibilities. Training programs had been established at several major installations, with curricula based on the lessons learned from the deep current investigation. These programs were producing intelligence personnel with specialized skills in detecting and countering infiltration attempts, but they would need experienced mentors to guide their development. The broader implications of her work extended far beyond the military community. The methods and procedures she had developed for detecting foreign intelligence operations were being adapted for use by civilian agencies and private organizations that face similar threats. Her expertise had contributed to a new understanding of how to protect sensitive capabilities in an era of sophisticated adversary intelligence operations. As she prepared to leave the restaurant and return to her quarters, Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction about the path her career had taken. She had started as someone trying to prove herself worthy of working with elite operators, and she had become a leader in protecting those operators from threats they might never see coming. The challenges ahead would be significant, but Sarah was confident in her ability to meet them. She had built a strong foundation of experience, expertise, and professional relationships that would enable her to continue making meaningful contributions to national security. More importantly, she had found a mission that utilized all of her capabilities while making a real difference in protecting the people and capabilities that were crucial to American security interests. The journey from proving herself to a skeptical SEAL team to becoming the Navy's leading counterintelligence expert had taught her that the most valuable contributions often come from combining technical expertise with operational understanding. Her success had shown that the best way to protect elite military capabilities was to have someone who understood both the threats they faced and the operational requirements they needed to meet. As Senior Chief Martinez walked back to her quarters, she knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to serve her country and protect her fellow service members. It was a responsibility she embraced with the same determination and professionalism that had carried her through every challenge she had faced since that first difficult day at Team 7.